This is a radical culture shift that Jesus is proposing in the gospel today as he goes through, in this section of the Sermon on the Mount, goes through the various of the Ten Commandments and takes it down a couple notches, brings it deeper a couple notches. From what you could describe as a minimalism, or as maybe at least a temptation towards minimalism, right? If we're only reading the commandment in the strictest negative sense, like this is the thing that you shouldn't do is so God doesn't get angry at you or something like that. Like don't kill anybody, don't commit adultery. Taking it from that to what's the fullest intention of the law? Not just what does it tell me not to do, but what's the positive thing that the Lord is trying to command? What's the disposition of heart that God desires for me to have with respect to other people? Which demonstrates that God is not just concerned with the minimalist approach, but like God is concerned with every part of our life. Because of his love for us, he's concerned with even the most intimate and secret thoughts of our hearts. So God is inviting us to more. He wants more from us than what's sort of the basic outline of the Ten Commandments, because he wants more for us, because he wants us to have fullness of life. And he knows that only by us allowing him more deeply in to transform not just our actions, but our hearts and every part of our life, are we really able to have the fullness of life that God intends for us to have. So that's the invitation from the Lord to each of us as disciples, is to go deeper, to allow him in further, to transform even more than our actions, but also our hearts and minds. But there's also, through what the Lord is saying to us in the gospel today and through our living it out, there's an invitation not just to us, but an invitation that's meant to be extended to the world through us. Part of the reason that Jesus gives us all of his commandments is, he says, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So there's a way in which our life is supposed to be an invitation to others to follow Jesus, right? And there's a way in which that's intuitive, I think, right? People should be able to see that there's something different about us. There's a joy that we have because of our relationship with the Lord. There's a peace that can't be found anywhere else. That makes sense. But, as you read everything that Jesus says in the gospel today, as he's like dialing it up, that's not at all intuitive, that's an invitation to follow him, right? That's the kind of thing that I think most people on first hearing would say, yeah, nobody can do that. Like, why would I even try to do that? That's not even possible. I can't even be angry at anyone. Like, I can't ever react in anger, So there's an invitation that the Lord desires to extend through us by the way that we live all of this, by demonstrating that this is the only way to have life. Yes, the way of Jesus is hard, and I think we need to admit that to ourselves and to anyone else who we're inviting to follow us in this path of discipleship, to come with us. But it's hard because it leads to fullness of life. It's a narrow path, but really it's the only path that leads to life. As we've been talking a lot about in the last couple of weeks, the pastoral plan and the things that we're trying to do as a parish and some of the cultural changes and various changes we'd like to see. And I think part of us being able to fully live our mission to evangelize that's been entrusted to us as a parish means that we have to have a cultural change around this kind of, I guess you could call it a culture of welcome or of invitation, a culture which allows people to take the first steps of discipleship in following Jesus with the help of a community. Like seeing everything that the Lord is demanding of us in the gospel, this is really hard. And we shouldn't expect that you can just say this to someone and they'll just jump on board and be good to go. Right? I can't just read this off to someone who doesn't know Jesus and expect that tomorrow They're going to be dialed in. They're going to be doing it all. I can't just give someone the Mass schedule and say, yep, here you go. Got to come to church on Sunday. It's really important. And think that that's enough. But what the Lord wants is by our life, by our words, by everything that we do, I think to make it easier to follow him. Not in the sense of lowering the bar or changing the expectations or changing the way of life that Christ has laid out for us, but making it easier to take the first step towards Christ, because we know it's a step that's not being taken alone, but a step that's being taken in the context of a community and with the support of others. When I was, after I graduated from college, before I entered seminary, I spent 2 years working in campus ministry at my alma mater at Grand Valley. And campus ministry, we'd host a bunch of different events for students, and we have a lot of social things as well as retreats and stuff. So whenever we had social events, all you had to do was put free food or free pizza or something on the poster, and you'd get 100 people show up, right? It's an easy sell for college students. Free food, they're there. But then we'd have, hey, we've got this weekend retreat going on, and it was a lot harder sell. Oh no, I got a thing with a guy, I've got a party going on, or whatever, right? Any number of things. It's a lot harder sell. So if you can't expect to just say from the pulpit or whatever, hey, come to this retreat, and 100 people are going to show up just like they showed up for the free pizza. But what did work, what was effective in inviting people to a retreat or whatever that thing was that was kind of taking the next step with Christ, was a personal approaching someone and say, hey, I'm going on this retreat. I would really love for you to come with me. I went on a similar thing last year. I had a great experience. Just here's what God did in my life through this, and I would love for you to experience that as well. Right? That's the kind of invitation. If we want to create a culture of evangelization in our parish, I think that kind of invitation through personal testimony, through personal, hey, walk with me, that accompaniment, which is the word that Pope Francis uses a lot to describe this disposition, that is the thing that is really going to allow people who maybe haven't even considered taking a step towards Christ to be able to do that for the first time, or maybe have been away from him for a while, to be able to do that. So that's the culture that I think the Lord is inviting us as a parish to have, that culture of welcome and of invitation, of walking with people. And the good news is we're not starting from scratch, right? There's a lot of good things happening already at St. Francis, thanks be to God. And I think the Lord, just as he in the gospel today is taking the Mosaic law and he's bringing it down, saying, I want to take you deeper. I think that's what he desires for us as a parish as well, is to take the good things that are already happening here at St. Francis, but let's bring it deeper. Let's do more. Let's walk more closely with people who are in need of that kind of personal accompaniment in Christ. Jesus says in the gospel today that whoever obeys and teaches these commandments will be called greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Obeys but also teaches, not just by our words, but teach by our example, our testimony, our way of life. That we know that following Jesus is hard, that this way of life is hard, but it's the only way that leads to life. And that's why we want people to come with us, right? Not because we're perfect. It's not an invitation to come follow me, because I've got my life all figured out. But it's an invitation to come with me to follow Jesus. Let's do this together. And because of what I've experienced of his work in my life, I want you to experience the same thing. So let's do this together. Yes, the path of discipleship is hard. But at the same time, what St. Paul said in the second reading is also the case, that what we're talking about is not just the challenging sort of way of life that Jesus is inviting us to in the gospel, but also what we're talking about is the thing that no eye has seen and no ear has heard, and it hasn't even entered into the imagination of man, the things that God has prepared for those who love him. We're inviting people to know a love which is so great that we don't even really have words to describe it, and we can't even hardly begin to imagine it. That's the invitation that we extend to others to follow Christ together with us. So may the Lord continue to transform us and deepen his work in each of us who are gathered here, that we might be ones who also invite others to follow Christ together with us, to know him more deeply, and that knowing him they might have life.